adventurers, my name is Sarah and I'm the Neverland Navigator. I know I promised my next video would be about Beltane, but there's something I need to discuss. For the last month, I haven't been making videos due to an overwhelming sense of grief. The 7 stages of grief are shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. Shock is the initial emotion when you hear about something that causes you grief. Denial is the stage that you pretend the news isn't real. Anger is when you respond to this news with hostile emotions. Bargaining is the stage where you look for a way to avoid the situation that's causing you grief. Depression sets in once you finally accept that the situation or news that you've heard is true. Testing is the stage where you look for coping mechanisms to deal with your grief. And acceptance is when you finally decide to move past or move forward the incident that caused you the grief. Usually my blog is about parenting and polyamory, but part of parenting is having family members. And at the beginning of May, one of my family members passed away. On May 5th, my sister Carrie died of colon cancer at the age of 36. I wasn't really prepared to experience that, particularly since we haven't been talking very much in the last few years. She didn't agree with my lifestyle, and I respected her decision when she said she didn't want to speak to me again. We had a memorial service for her the week after she passed, and I was able to say something that I find to be really comforting and really honest. I'm going to share that poem with you today. Regardless of your religious background or what you believe, my sister was a God-fearing Christian and really held onto her beliefs that there was a better place to go after her time on earth. So this poem I read in addition to a couple things that I said about her at her memorial service. You never said you're leaving, you never said goodbye. You were gone before I knew it, and only God knew why. A million times I needed you, a million times I cried. If love alone could have saved you, you would never have died. In life I loved you dearly, in death I love you still. In my heart you hold a place that no one could ever fill. It broke my heart to lose you, but you didn't go alone, for part of me went with you the day God took you home. I think this is a really comforting poem. It definitely was true about my relationship with my sister since we weren't speaking for the last couple years. I also feel like it speaks to the other moments of grief in my life that I have been dealing with for the last month. A few days before my sister passed, on May 2nd, was the 3rd anniversary of my first son's due date. So my first son, Peter, was supposed to be born on May 2nd, 2015. And this year, he would have turned 3. I had a really hard time dealing with that this year, knowing that I have a little boy, my rainbow baby, and seeing the way that he's grown up and how he's experienced life. And I missed out on those things with Peter. Today is June 21st, and this is the 4-year anniversary that Wendy, my daughter, has died and gone on to Neverland. And every day that I see my son Orion, every day that I see my son Orion, I hold him a little bit tighter, I squeeze him a little bit longer, because I never got to do that with her. I never got to do that with his brother Peter. I felt it appropriate to share this on my daughter's angelversary, and so that you understand why I haven't been making videos this past month. It's something that I really want to get back to. It really honors Wendy and Peter that I'm able to say their names and do something that memorializes them, whether it's a video or, you know, this entire channel about parenting. So grief comes in many forms. Although I stated the stages that one person typically goes through, you won't always hit all those stages of grief, or maybe they'll come in different orders, or maybe they'll be spread out by, you know, days, weeks, months, years, decades. However you experience grief is totally appropriate for you. I know that when my daughter Wendy died, I didn't take the time to grieve because I was still in college and I was really focused about my upcoming externship and trying to get a job with my externship because it was a place I really loved, and I didn't take the time to allow myself to be sad or angry or whatever I was feeling at the time. I just kind of filed it away and decided I would deal with it later, which turned out to be not really a good idea. So before I even had the opportunity to come back to these feelings of grieving over Wendy's loss, I got pregnant again and ended up losing Peter, and I tried to do the same thing by just pushing my grief off and thought, well, I did it with my first baby, maybe I can just pretend that, you know, this didn't happen to me, and that didn't work out either. That was really bad. So I had this compounding grief over my two children that it wasn't good for me, and I needed to find an outlet or a manner in which I could deal with all this grief. And for me, I am the kind of person who needs to kind of wallow in my own self-misery for a while, and then find some sort of creative outlet to let those emotions go, and then I feel better. My husband, however, doesn't grieve that way. He likes to be distracted. He's the type who doesn't want to think about it. He just wants to have fun. He wants to completely kind of erase it out of his mind until he's able to deal with his feelings by himself. So this caused some contention because I couldn't understand why he wasn't crying and having a meltdown over the fact that our two children died. You know, I felt like, why don't you care? Didn't you love them? You know, isn't this important to you? And he was like, why can't you get out of this black hole that you're in and move on with life and have fun? So we had a lot of conversations, and we eventually got to understand where each person was in their stage of grief and how we best deal with these kinds of things. And so we've both kind of compromised on how we wanted to handle this situation as a couple. Just because you experience this traumatic event in your life and you feel the need to grieve in a particular way, it doesn't mean that the other people in your life are going to deal with it that way. Some people need to laugh and they make jokes about it. Some people get really quiet and they want to deal with it just within themselves with no extra help. Some people seek out therapy. Some people do creative stuff. Some people pour themselves into caring for someone or a pet or something. Try some different things. If you don't know how you grieve, try doing something creative. Write a journal or make a scrapbook or draw or write a song or a poem. If that doesn't work for you, get physical. Go and work out. Try bicycling. Bicycling takes a lot of energy. Go for walks, go hiking, play a sport. Seek out some kind of therapy, like either a therapist or a psychologist. You can do group therapy, a counselor. I found that group therapy was really helpful for me when I was grieving my children in the beginning, my miscarriages. That was super helpful to find someone who had experienced something similar to what I had experienced, and it kind of validated my feelings, and that I wasn't the only one going through grief like this. Even though we might have grieved differently, they understood where the source of my grief was coming from, and I found that to be really helpful. The point of this video is to give you some sense of self-awareness so that you understand what grief is and where you are in the process, and that however you do process going through grief, you are going through grief. Grief is not the roadblock that you stay at. You go through it. And take your time. Don't let anyone tell you that you have only a certain amount of time to grieve, or a certain way to grieve, or that you shouldn't grieve. You take care of your own mental health, however you need to do it, and take the time, and you have permission. If no one has given you permission, you have my permission to grieve over whatever situation is in your life. Whether it's something small or something big, whatever it is, if it causes you stress and trauma in your life, you have permission to have feelings about that situation. So I hope that this helped you. If you would like to reach out to me and talk to me about your grief, I'd be happy to listen to you. I am not a licensed therapist, but I can be an ear to hear about what's going on in your life, and I'd be happy to offer some friendly advice. But honestly, if you feel like you can't handle what's going on and you are going to cause yourself self-harm, or you are concerned about your own physical or mental safety, please contact a therapist, or there's a suicide hotline, or there's lots of resources out there. Please contact someone, a professional who can get you the care that you need. Depression and grief is nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be ashamed of that. And sometimes our problems are just bigger than us. They're just bigger than us, and we need someone else to help whittle it down to a size that we can deal with. So don't feel ashamed if you need outside help. I'm sorry this wasn't a happy video, but I'll see you guys next time. Second star to the right, straight on till morning.